go through their neighborhood, it's going to be like Europe in the Middle Ages, where every time you cross over a frontier, you have to pay somebody. And then that's what's going to make food ridiculously expensive, because it might be cheap getting to the city, but by the time you get paying off all the warlords to get to the grocery store, it may be triple to what you would have to normally pay.
We no longer have a stock market anymore. Instead, now we have a market of stocks. The new highs in the stock market are only following central bank money printing, and you simply can't blindly buy anymore. Treasury balance sheet hitting all-time highs. Now, there's always a bull market somewhere, and Trade Genius is here to help you find it. Their proprietary algorithms are finely tuned to find the most profitable winners and losers to help you maximize your profit. Learn to trade stocks, cryptocurrency, binary options, perfect to take control of your financial future, and discover the lucrative world of trading and receive personal coaching from Trade Geniuses Bob Kudla and Philip Cleaver. Right now until Father's Day, you can save over 50% off their bundled monthly specials, or use the promo code Father's Day for a whopping 40% off all non-bundled items. TradeGeniusAcademy.com. The link's in the description box below, and on with the interview. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, again, Bob Kudla, TradeLikeAGenius.com. So I've had a lot of people asking me, what do you feel about the FedCoin and the ongoing money printing? And a way to protect yourself, we're going to have to think of different assets or different asset classes to be able to weather through if indeed it does go into a hyperinflationary event, some sort of reset or whatever it might be with the monetary system we understand currently.
China's in trouble. We talked about this before. It's really, really fascinating to me is, look, there's 5 countries in the world that can really, what I would call, they're the feed the world people if they have enough. You're talking about United States, you're talking about Canada, Australia, you're talking Argentina, you're talking Brazil, and that's pretty much it. And then you look at that, Australia is going through incredible cold weather, and Canada is going to go offline on the solar minimum too. So you're down to United States, Brazil, and Argentina, and I think there's not enough infrastructure in the North African countries yet to be able to feed Europe. And Europe kind of hit or miss. Some years they can feed themselves, some years they can't. I failed to mention Russia, but if you notice, Russia and Ukraine have already decided that push comes to shove, they're not going to export. And the United States, we're getting this huge flooding in our central river valley right now, and China just basically is displacing 1 million people in one of their river valleys right now with flooding, as one of their fertile valleys too. So we're going to start seeing. That's the thing about the solar minimum. These river valleys are going to get inundated, and they're not going to be able to put the crops in the ground. So I'm expecting to see corn, not wheat so much, but I think I'm waiting to see corn really go in higher in prices.
I was too last year, and the 2019 no plan, but the USDA put in a bunch of fictitious numbers, and finally just this last crop report reduced down 21 million acres finally this year. Wish that would have happened last year, because it would have caused corn to go the direction I wanted it to. So, yeah, they can't hide it anymore. I mean, and in this hurricane that's going up straight up the valley, they're talking about not salt water being pushed all the way up into the Great Lakes, but that storm surge itself, because the river's at such a flood stage massively anyway, that as it's coming down, there's just more water on top of more water. It's got to back up in there. But this thing about Argentina, speaking of currency, you're getting double the black market rate versus the government rate. So a lot of the exporters down there, the country, like we'll use Brazil, border right there. So the Brazilians are coming over and they're getting a black market rate just over the border, and they're walking in and then buying the crops for 50%. So the farmers are much more willing to sell to the black market traders that are bringing their own trucks in versus the government mandated price of half that, and it's changing every day. Last time I looked, it was around 68, and then the black market rate was up around 140. So the arbitrage between you having a vehicle and money on the black market rate to come in and buy double the amount out of, and then bring it back in and sell it in your own country at the regular price and then double it. So they learned that quickly. They don't want to sell to the government anymore. So there's a backup in all the barge traffic, and there's a backup in deliveries to the ports because nobody wants to sell off into the official government rate because they know they can get double that if they wait for somebody to come across the border. And then there's all these new trading stations that are setting up there where they'll even call in orders in advance, like, hey, we're coming down with this much, we have this many trucks, and then get ready. And they just pull through and fill it. Here's your money. Go spend it quick because it's going to be worth less tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Argentina isn't trying to block those bridges back over to.
Unbelievable.
It's just amazing. Because they have a river across most of that northern frontier. So I'm expecting to say I saw articles where they were demonizing the farmers, the government, because just like Venezuela, they want to underpay the farmer so that they can look good in front of their constituents. It's kind of like instead of defund the police, it's defund the farmer, for their political ruin. And then they destroyed Venezuela's production that way. And they may do that for Argentina. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it may come down to the United States and Brazil, being able to be the only people that can really produce anything. And it's going to be scary. And I know in India now, they're blocking exports of certain crops over there. I know they blocked exports of certain drugs.
And, they just cut that rice crop down. They were having riots already in the country because of rice prices increasing too fast.
Yeah.
I hope we don't see, are we going to see that on American streets? It gets too expensive?
I don't know. I mean, a year ago, I couldn't have predicted the two things. And I think I pride myself on kind of seeing around the corner. I didn't see no pandemic coming around the corner. And I certainly didn't see this coordinated approach to basically defund our ability to protect our citizens. Go through their neighborhood. It's going to be like Europe in the Middle Ages, where every time you cross over a frontier, you have to pay somebody, and then that's what's going to make food ridiculously expensive, because it might be cheap getting to the city, but by the time you get paying off all the warlords to get to the grocery store, it may be triple to what you would have to normally pay. And I think that's the thing nobody's thinking through. They're thinking, hey, when this is over, look, if you're a predator, look at the mafia did in Italy, and the Irish with the Molly Maguires. It's not just a black or brown thing. The whites did it too. When there's no police, they become the police in those neighborhoods. And that's what's going to happen when society breaks down. We're going to basically go back to some sort of, feudal kind of approach where, you're going to have to pay tolls to get your stuff in and out. And, look, Amazon, their trucks aren't getting in there unless they pay a warlord off to get it to the next block over. And if they cross over another warlord's block, they got to pay that person too. So I think what's going to come from all of that is that they're going to try to front run it by saying no more cash.
Down to the crypto. And again, if you could grow your own food, or if you're in a community that grows food, you don't even have to worry about that, because within your local municipality, if you're growing quite a bit, you won't be so reliant on those other essentials coming in.
Yeah, it's more than food, Dave. I mean, look, in Southern California, there's only 3 exits out of here. So the big worry was if you get these big earthquakes, it cuts off water, gas, electricity. But, going out the north, you're either taking the 101 or you're taking the 5, or going out to the east, you're taking the 10, 40, or 8, right? So, those are 5 choke points that for 20 million people, and so that's the thing that's going to be interesting to me. And I worry about that because that's where I live, but it could be anything you want. They burned down one of the Amazon distribution centers coming into the valley. They burned down a few more of those. These Tifa people know the choke points, okay? These aren't just mob guys rioting in the street because they're angry. These are people with a predetermined mission to shut down Western society. So we're having that on top of the food stuff. So you're going to have to, people are going to have to make really hard decisions. You and I joked about this before. You take a ruler, you take a map, you draw it out 150 miles from the center city of every city, and that's where you probably want to live. You want to be more than a half a tank away from these folks being able to get to you. And that's the other thing too, gasoline. When are they going to start burning down the gas stations? They've done that before too. And so, people are going to be unable to get transported to their stuff. Not everybody's going to have the luxury of being able to move into the rural areas. And that's what's going to really, I think, cause a lot of dislocation.
And even if you're able to store petrol out on your farm, let's say you have a 200-gallon tank that you keep out on your farm, and you can't keep that gasoline indefinitely. Yeah, you have to use through it. You know, you just can't store it for 10 years and be like, oh, I got 200 gallons of gas that I stored for 10 years. No, you know, you got sludge at the bottom after that time. That's unusable.
Solar, and that's why I got in the solar business so many years ago. You know, it's not a panacea, but you know, you have an electric car, or you're going to have
Electric bikes.
I see so many electric bikes out here now that, you know, that's one way in which you can beat the system. The other one, I always tell people, look, buy one silver coin every week. If every patriot would do that, you would blow up probably J.P. Morgan Chase or one of the other bullion banks in a year, because they would not be able to, you know, you would force the price to go astronomical, because that's one of the most suppressed metals out there from a banking system, you know. And then Bitcoin, you know, if every person in the United States that believe how we believe, and let's say there's only 10 or 20 million of us, right? And everybody invested $1,000 in Bitcoin right now, you know, they would amply get paid over, because it would just blow up the, you know, the surge in demand will just blow up the price from the people who are suppressing it now in the futures market and the options market. They'll just get rolled right over. So people don't realize the power they have, you know, in terms of be able to force change. You know, it doesn't always have to be destructive. It could be, let's break up the banking systems.
I saw a report, Bitcoin addresses with one whole single Bitcoin or more in the address. And there's an enormous amount of people who have half, a quarter, you know, whatever fraction it is. And there's an enormous amount of millions and millions and millions of addresses, but they all contain just a tiny, tiny fraction of one. You know, and then I was looking at some of these funds coming out, the F fund, and they're, you know, it's unbelievable how much these new hedge funds are buying in, and these new investment arms, since you mentioned JP Morgan there, buying in enormous amounts of Bitcoin. You know, some of these funds are holding 1% of all the Bitcoin that's ever been mined. 2% of all the Bitcoin that's ever been mined is being held by a single entity, you know. So then where does it come into the decentralization part? Can it be, you know, taken over if so many of these investment funds come in and then actually control 51%? Would they fork? Would they not fork? Who knows? But to see that small amount of one whole Bitcoin addresses is very small, a smidgen. So get in off the system somehow. And, you know, I read this really interesting report today about confiscation of either gold, silver, Bitcoin, the money in your bank, or whatever it might be. There was a whole array of things that could be confiscated for a currency reset. And if it's in a custodial account for, you know, some of the crypto, unless it's segregated, they were saying that could possibly be confiscated for a reset on the dollar here. And I'm like, wondering about the custodial aspects of different things. Now, when I didn't before, I understand keeping it on exchange, unless you're able to really get in there and have the keys and work with people who have the keys and control of everything, versus it's just some out there entity. I'm not going to mention any, because that could be litigious. But there's a lot out there that just they lump everything together, and then the government could just come in and say, hey, it's all ours, versus have seg accounts or working with somebody who has keys and whatnot to be able to protect that sort of confiscation. You know, gold's one thing, physical, they know you ordered it. But, you know, coming in on a company where you might have something in there and then whoosh, swooping it out. We're living in strange times where they're going to want to reset the currency system.
Yeah, and you know, and people don't realize, you know, Germany, the Weimar Republic, they got out of their hyperinflation because they pledged the real estate of the nation. So a lot of people think that, oh, they're going after gold. Well, you know, gold is tiny compared to real estate.
Tiny, tiny. Silver's even smaller.
Yeah, so you know, why wouldn't somebody just say we're gonna do a 1% tax on all the real estate in the country? You know how much money you'd raise? I think there's $54 trillion of real estate or something like that. You know, so I mean, you can raise, you know, trillions over years that way. I think it might be 150 trillion. That's the mortgage or something like that. So there's a lot of money in real estate that they could tax if they wanted to, and they could tax every transaction. So they don't, you know, once they get you on a digital system, it could just be bombs away. and I think that's where they're going to go. Now, I think Bitcoin, there's going to be some decentralized currencies out there because, intelligence agencies and governments around the world and politicians still need a way to cheat. And so they're going to be able to operate outside of these systems, but everybody else is going to be stuck inside. They have to have untraceable currency to conduct that kind of business. I'm not being moral about it. I'm just saying I think that's what's going to happen. But you and I, we're going to be stuck in a system where they're going to just say, it's illegal for you to transact in anything other than FedCoin. What are you going to do? Besides barter, you're going to be stuck in that system. And I foresee that coming sooner than later, but I think there's digital currencies out there. And since we're speculating, I don't trade in the world of speculation. I just see what's in front of me. So in the meantime, I'll just take advantage of opportunities and protect my family, because you don't know, something may come to pass the other way. This whole thing may blow up. I always tell my family, I said, the aristocrats in France thought they couldn't lose either, in the 1700s, and they turned around and created the whole new Western civilization because the people rose up. So, these guys may think they're in charge, but look how fast the world changed in the urban areas in this country in one weekend. So it doesn't mean that there can't be more of that kind of change when other people get mad too.
You got to think about that French Revolution because of food. If you want to bring it back to the catalyst that started all that, hungry people being oppressed by the government, outrageous taxes for food, and they were already hungry. Not such quality foods, again, right at the bottom of the barrel, forced to eat rye every day. I mean, it's a specialty bread now for us, but, being forced to eat that all the time, even though it was moldy and whatnot, people got really, really angry because the government didn't take care of their belly being full. And when your belly's not full, you're going to demand even more change than we're seeing right now for, let's say, bad money management. When it comes to the food, that's truly what changes governments and civilization, society. Food, food, food.
Well, that was the Arab Spring in 2011 too. So they it was food shortages because they couldn't afford to import the wheat, and then they started to raise the prices of everything because the Fed. The Fed caused. That's why the Fed shifted gears so fast. That's why gold and silver was flying in 2011 and got whacked, because they knew they had to take a U-turn on the way they were going with the dollar, because they were killing it. They were letting the dollar devalue, and all the countries that used the dollar for commerce were like, we can't afford to feed our people. And then you started having Tunisia and Egypt and Libya and all those countries in North Africa just started to revolt because they couldn't import the wheat at a reasonable price. So I think that's going to happen. That's one of the nice things about being in America, is that we do and we will be able to produce enough food. There's a lot of land that's just sitting fallow that they'll figure it out. And I know you and I always just go different ways here, but I've been reading now that we're going to start seeing like indoor rice being grown indoors. Because you can feed about 150 to 200 people a year on an acre of rice if you could control the basically the 3-crop rotation, 3 crops a year. And if you can control the environment, that makes it affordable to throw a roof over top of things, or to put grow lights on top of this stuff. And I think you're going to start seeing more of that kind of creative thinking. We're going to be blowing out of soybeans, and we're going to be growing rice in the Mississippi Delta here, pretty soon, because Brazil's pretty much controlling the soybean markets, and so I think you're going to see a lot of that shifting around. But there's going to be a couple of years where we're going to be behind the curve.
Well, see, I'm wondering, that's such a huge opportunity to restart the economy. Imagine what a huge Kickstarter it would be to start the indoor vertical agriculture, or what you're talking about, intensive cultivation on multi-platforms. But think about all the money that would be put back in for the investment, but then also the jobs and skills training, and just rerouting everybody over into the ag without telling them the true reason why we needed to go there. Grand Solar Minimum, hey, we could have told you 20 years ago this was coming. The economy gets imploded, evaporated, but then, hey, we got a perfect solution for you, just what you mentioned. We can feed more people. We can do it more economically with less impact on the environment, checks all those boxes. You can put everybody back to work, check those boxes. Then you get the massive amount of infrastructure because it really needs hard physical, steels, metals, glass, computer-driven, irrigation systems along with fertilizer and all that thing. That's real hard asset that needs to be purchased, manufactured. And then again, it's a way to start manufacturing back in the States. So there's so many things that could come about if it went into a massive, massive scale, like Almira in Spain, where you get just square mile after square mile after square mile covered in greenhouses. But imagine if we did it by hundreds of square miles by hundreds of square miles, and regionally as well. So you could be growing things at any time of the year. And imagine if you had a climate controlled system, you'd still be able to grow basil and lettuce even in the middle of January up in Michigan, northern Michigan, because it would be climate controlled. There's still enough ambient UV coming through the light to be able to heat that. I think that's going to be the next play. Is there's going to be so many disused, disused shopping malls and things. That's to a point. We could probably feed 2% of the population of the United States, refurbing those. But I'm talking about full, brand new rollout and build from the beginning to kickstart the economy again.